you can't care what people think, whether they're offended or not, because anything you say, someone somewhere will be offended.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right.
You know what's wild? We're living in an era where saying what you actually think has become some kind of revolutionary act, and nobody, and I mean nobody, has made that clearer than Ricky Gervais. His old Golden Globes takedowns are going viral again, and honestly, they're hitting even harder now than they did back then. Why? Because everything he warned us about, everything he mocked, has only gotten worse. If you're tired of the fake outrage and performative nonsense that's taken over entertainment, then stick around because we're about to break down exactly why Gervais became Hollywood's worst nightmare. And hey, if you appreciate someone willing to speak truth to power without apologizing for it, smash that like button and subscribe because we're just getting started. Let's set the scene. Ricky Gervais got invited to host the Golden Globes not once, not twice, but 5 times. Now, according to the man himself, he did it the first time because he was flattered. Makes sense, right? A huge global audience and a chance to write some killer jokes. It's a comedian's dream. The second time around, he figured he could improve on what he'd already done. But here's where it gets interesting. He wasn't going to do it a third time. He was done. But then people started saying he'd never be invited back, that Hollywood had blacklisted him, and that he'd crossed too many lines. So, what did Ricky do? He came back specifically to annoy them. That's the level of not giving a damn we're talking about here. And boy, did he deliver.
If you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. I did the first time, so I was sort of quite flat, and it's a huge closed audience for a comedian. I like writing gags, that's what I do. I did it a second time, so I thought I could improve on the first. And I wasn't going to do it a third, but then lots of people saying he'd never be invited back. So I did it to annoy.
After that second hosting gig, powerful figures in Hollywood quietly tried to cancel him, not because his jokes were poorly written or because he bombed on stage. No, his crime was telling uncomfortable truths. He'd pierced the industry's carefully maintained bubble, openly mocking the hypocrisy, the virtue signaling, and the selective outrage that runs rampant through Tinseltown. That kind of honesty made certain executives nervous because it threatened the unity of their precious echo chamber. When jokes start sounding too close to reality, that's when people panic. Behind the scenes, there was apparently real pressure to sideline him, tone him down, or replace him with someone safer and more compliant, someone who'd play ball, tell the approved jokes, and keep everyone comfortable.
The first two to sort of get me, right. I think the last time I just thought, why is this saying such horrible things? But I think this time they were just gagged, or they checked in security and checked they got a sense of humour to get in. I don't know, but last year they had a right.
But here's the thing. The Golden Globes organizers weren't as ideologically rigid as some of Hollywood's gatekeepers. They understood something crucial, that Gervais's blunt honesty was exactly why audiences were tuning in. People were tired of the same sanitized, predictable award show nonsense. They wanted someone who'd actually say what everyone was thinking. So instead of bending to the outrage mob, they brought him back, knowing that his fearlessness was what made the show impossible to ignore. And let's talk about that fearlessness for a second. Many people were genuinely surprised that Gervais had the audacity to stand in front of people who could literally make or break careers and tell them they were full of it. But that's exactly what made it brilliant. As Gervais himself put it, it wasn't a room full of wounded soldiers. These were people who pretend to be someone else for a living. They're actors. They get paid millions to play make-believe. So why should they be immune from jokes?
Well, I liked it the year before when people, people they were stunned. They couldn't believe that a guy had the courage and the brain power to stand up in front of famous people and make jokes about them.
I know.
Oh my God!
I know. Like it was. It wasn't a room full of wounded soldiers. Right. They were people who pretend to be someone else for a living. Right. It was no.
This brings us to the backbone of Gervais's entire philosophy. And honestly, it's something the woke crowd desperately needs to internalize. His view is beautifully simple. No matter what you do or say, someone, somewhere, will be offended. Offense is inevitable, especially in a culture that's obsessed with policing language and intent. So, if outrage is guaranteed anyway, why not speak honestly? Why censor yourself to appease the loudest complainers in the room? As Gervais puts it, just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right. And that's the truth bomb nobody wants to hear. Creative freedom only survives when people stop walking on eggshells.
You can't care what people think whether they're offended or not, because anything you say, someone somewhere will be offended.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right.
Jerry speaks his mind because he can, and because he believes that's the whole point of having free speech in the first place. The real problem, in his eyes, is that the woke crowd has traded conviction for approval. They're constantly pandering, constantly terrified of saying the wrong thing, and constantly chasing applause from online mobs. That fear-driven approach doesn't inspire anyone. It doesn't entertain anyone, and it certainly doesn't persuade anyone. If they stopped worrying about what Twitter thinks and started standing for something real, they might actually regain respect. Now, the Golden Globes organizers did try to police his speech. They gave him a list of rules: no profanity, no nudity, the usual stuff. And Gervais's response? Perfect. He said, fine. No profanity, no problem. He's got a huge vocabulary. He could work around it.
So she's suggesting that there was something omitted from her version that she didn't quite, it did not add up.
I did say, I said the list of rules they gave me, and I said, no profanity, that's fine, I've got a huge vocabulary.
Because here's the thing. You can try to control the words someone uses, but you can't control creativity. You can't kill real comedy by banning certain phrases. A truly talented comedian will just find another way to land the same joke, and it'll probably be even funnier because of the constraint. Jerry's entire point is unapologetic. A joke is just a joke. It may sound offensive to some people, but that's the nature of comedy. Jokes don't exist to comfort everyone in the room. They exist to provoke laughter, discomfort, and reflection. Some people will laugh, while others will bristle. And that tension is what makes humor powerful. Comedy isn't meant to be polite or sanitized. It's meant to poke at our blind spots and challenge what we take too seriously. At its best, a joke forces us to re-examine our values, our assumptions, and our sacred cows. It holds up a mirror even when we don't like what we see. And sometimes that moment of offense sparks conversation or change. When we start treating jokes like crimes, we lose their deeper purpose.
And then I said, no nudity. Oh, that's a shame, so I've got a huge vocabulary. But then I slipped in a tiny... So I did say, I've said it 3 times tonight. I mean, I don't know what the rules are.
Let's jump to one of Hollywood's most talked about moments, the Will Smith slap. Gervais didn't hold back when discussing how he would have handled it differently. He claimed that if he'd been hosting that night, he wouldn't have made a joke about Jada Smith's hair. Instead, he would have made a joke about her boyfriend, referencing the very public entanglement with August Alsina.
When you were watching this year, and Chris Rock gets slapped in the face for making the G.I. Jane joke, were you sitting there going like, how the fuck did I survive?
Well, no, but that soon trended.
Yeah.
People on Twitter were trending, people saying, oh, what would have happened if Ricky had been hosting it? And I said, nothing, because I wouldn't have made a joke about his wife's hair. I'd have made a joke about her boyfriend.
Now, that's not just about picking a different target. It's about timing, context, and hitting the mark with clever observation rather than safe commentary. The moment required humor that cut through the noise while acknowledging the messy reality. If Gervais had been behind the mic instead of Chris Rock, the energy of that night would have been completely different. That joke might have been sharp, pointed, and unforgettable rather than controversial for the wrong reason. But here's what really gets me about that whole situation. That joke Will Smith smacked someone for was, as Gervais pointed out, the sweetest, lamest joke in the world. It wasn't even an insult. It was a throwaway comment, a little toss away as the host was walking past, the kind of thing you'd expect at any award show. And Jada rolled her eyes. That was it. But Will felt he had to go up there and be a man, had to make a statement, and had to defend his wife's honor over nothing. The overreaction perfectly illustrated how thin-skinned we've become as a culture. Now, let's get into the meat of what made Gervais's Golden Globes monologues legendary, his takedown of Hollywood's hypocrisy. Remember when he told the room full of celebrities that if they won an award, they shouldn't use it as a platform to make a political speech because they're in no position to lecture the public about anything? They know nothing about the real world. That landed like a bomb because it's true. These are people who live in mansions, get driven everywhere, have assistants for everything, and haven't experienced normal life in decades. Yet, they feel entitled to preach to regular people about morality and politics.